This is FightFans Radio.
Let's get ready to rumble! Oh my God! Unbelievable!
Down goes Frazier! Down goes
It's time! You're listening to New Mexico's only mixed martial arts and boxing podcast, The Low Blow, on AtomCombatSports.com and FightFans Radio. It is another episode of The Low Blow Radio on FightFans Radio, SouthwestFight.com, and USCombatSports.com. I am Justin Goodrum, joined by Jorge Hernandez and Will McClary. What's up, guys? How's it going?
What's going on?
So, Will, you recovered from your sickness from last week, huh?
Oh man, I'm trying to do it. People, you got to get the Z-Pack. It does wonders, but you know the virus is out there. Watch out for that, man. But it's good to be back.
No doubt. Definitely. Good to have on today's episode. We're going to talk about Holly Holm's newest opponent. We're going to recap a crazy UFC 152 and preview the heavyweight main event on UFC on Field 5, featuring Stipe Miocic against Stefan Struve. That's going to be on Field this weekend. So we'll be talking about that. As always, you can get in touch through the show, through Facebook, through Twitter, through @TheLowBlow, and through email to lowblow505@gmail.com. You can also find our show on Stitcher Radio and on iTunes. And also you can get in touch with FightFans Radio through Facebook, through Twitter, YouTube, and Ustream. It's all one handle, FightFans Radio. Find all their content on those social media networks. So let's start the standing 8 count. And Jorge, you have some news about Holm's next opponent, which she'll be having her fight in December.
Yeah, definitely. It's she'll actually be facing Myriam Lamar, another French woman that she's actually faced before. They fought about 2 years ago, and Holly won by a unanimous decision here in Albuquerque. This new fight, though, the second fight, the card is actually dubbed Fire and Ice. It's going to be held December 7th, and it's going to be for the IBA and IBF junior welterweight titles here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So fans can expect the standard 6-bout fight sheet that Frescas Promotions typically does take. We're actually going to see the debut of amateur boxer that I'm pretty excited to see is Jason Sanchez. He has 2 older brothers who are professionals as well, so it's very interesting to actually go at it. So should be a pretty good fight.
No doubt. Here are the results, the main card results for UFC 152. The first fight of the night featured Jackson's MMA fighter, Cub Swanson, defeating Charles Oliveira by a spectacular knockout in round 1 at 240. I guess you gave him there with your interview.
I think so, man.
I guess you can kind of take credit for that victory. Matt Hamill defeated, no doubt, totally. Matt Hamill defeated Roger Hollett via unanimous decision 29-28, 30-27, 30-27. Michael Bisping defeated Brian Stan by unanimous decision 29-28, 29-28, and 29-28. Demetrius Johnson defeated Joseph Benavidez via split decision 48-47, 47-48, and 49-46 to become the first ever flyweight champion. And in the main event, John Jones defeated Vitor Belfort via submission in Americana in round 4, 54 seconds into that round to retain the UFC light heavyweight title. So a very entertaining night of fights. We'll talk about that event definitely in more detail later on in the main event topics.
Well, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., he may not face a full year suspension according to Cheech and Chong. NSAC's got, I had to do it. I'm sorry. Keith Kaiser. So, obviously, he's not going to set the precedent in terms of the first time when he tested positive for marijuana after his loss to Sergio Martinez. So, when talking about the boxing scene, Kaiser stated this: if you were looking at the same drug, he would be looking at least a year. This is not just a different drug, but a different king of drug. So he's comparing this to marijuana opposed to diuretics and the steroids. So looks like Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is going to get some sympathy. But maybe he can go on the road with Snoop Dogg and his son and start up a father and son smoke tour.
Maybe
That's bad.
add Wiz Khalifa to that as well. So.
it's possible. I mean, Snoop changed his name to Snoop Lion. Maybe this guy could be Julio Lion. Julio Leon.
I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to leave it alone.
All right. Well, more bad news. Unfortunately, the Melendez versus Healy card was canceled this weekend. Strikeforce's Gilbert Melendez was supposed to fight Pat Healy on a card, I was looking forward to because locally Isaac Valley Flag was going to be on that card.
True. Yep.
And hopefully it was going to be his coming out party with that, especially after an impressive victory over Jay-Z Cavalcante. But fortunately, what was pretty cool that I like to see is that the promotion went ahead and paid the guys for still, the event not going down. So that was a positive and good sign to actually see Strikeforce doing that.
No doubt. Actually, we got some good news in terms of injuries. We're so used to hearing terrible injuries in mixed martial arts, but actually some good news with injuries in boxing. Sergio Martinez may not need knee surgery. He's going to have an MRI this coming Monday. He visited his doctor in Argentina, and he was diagnosed with a ruptured medial meniscus in his right knee. So he's going to have an MRI next Monday to see whether or not he can avoid surgery. He was battling the pain there against his win over Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. A couple of weeks ago. So if he doesn't need the surgery, he could return in 2012, and he may take a fight in his native Argentina. So hopefully, if that happens, we'll be able to see it in the States. I know international fights in boxing is kind of touch and go and seeing those fights live. So hopefully, Sergio Martinez is a spectacular fighter, and hopefully if that happens in Argentina, there's some way that HBO or Showtime, whoever airs the fight, can kind of work out the time thing. So hopefully he's not out until 2013, but the injury is serious. He could be out of that year. So hopefully that comes out with some good news next week.
Yep, and also another news this week, we had our 3 superstars in the state actually announce their next fight. Austin No Doubt Trout and Miguel Cotto officially announced their bout Monday in New York City and also Wednesday in Puerto Rico. So, they're doing the media thing. We're getting set up for their December 1st World Championship fight at Madison Square Garden. So both guys showed a lot of respect for one another. And what surprised me, I don't know if you guys saw photos, but of how much taller Austin Trout was than Cotto. It was a good 2-3 inches, which really surprised me. And it's going to be
I saw that.
It's going to be interesting to see how that actually plays out, or what type of style Austin Trout does take for this fight. But it really surprised me the height advantage he had when the two were finally face to face. But they officially announced their bout. As I mentioned, they showed a lot of respect to one another. Even Austin Trout didn't get booed too crazy by the Puerto Rican fans. They actually liked him. So maybe because he's such a humble guy, but definitely something to look forward to. Another thing that was announced just today, the Carlos Condit and George St. Pierre. So looking forward to that one also. But something I'm really pumped about this weekend, tomorrow night, XFC 20, a local guy here out of my area, my part of the city of the South Valley, is Joby Sanchez, 3-0 out of the Chavez Dojo. I mean, what was it? 2 years ago, Jay, that we first started this podcast, and we saw this guy in action win a minor promotional title. And, this year he did go in and beat over 100 contestants for the XFC tryouts. And now he's going to make his promotional debut with the XFC on Access TV tomorrow night, formerly HDNet. So definitely worth checking out, and something I know people, especially in this part of the city, are really going to pay attention to.
Also, on some sad, the boxing world lost one of its champs, Corey Sanders. But today, news have been updated that the arrests were made for 3 of the suspected gunmen deemed responsible for his death. This really reminded me again of the loss of Vernon Forrest. Great warriors in the ring. Corey Sanders really was known for defeating Vladimir Klitschko in 2003, causing a major upset. And we just hope that his family gets through this and his soul rests in peace. And I hope we can just stop losing people, period. But it's just a tragedy with these fighters to show so much courage in the ring and then just to be taken out in senseless violence. So he will be missed, though, and definitely remembered in the ring.
No doubt. So, guys, let's go 3 rounds, and that's the segment where all 3 of us will have about a minute or so to talk about what's catching our interest in mixed martial arts or boxing, or what's really pissing us off about the sport. So I guess we didn't do a coin flip this time, guys. So who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I can go first.
Thanks, Jorge.
Yeah, no, you're welcome.
Thanks.
I had one that I'm pretty, not necessarily adamant about, but it's something that I've noticed is helping women's boxing is the success of female MMA, whether it be in Invicta or Strikeforce. The fight this weekend between Cecilia Brækhus and Anne-Sophie Matisse, and what's the second best fight that can be made in women's boxing. It was very exciting just because of the fact that Cecilia Brækhus dominated. It was almost a Sergio Martinez performance against Julio Cesar Chavez. Just very incredible. And I think the more people see these fighters, whether it be obviously the women in MMA have the larger avenue to be showcased just because women's boxing is no longer on the pay-per-view cards or even on the ESPN Friday Night Fights. So because of this, I think as long as women's MMA keeps developing, eventually, as weird as it sounds, it's going to bring women's boxing to the forefront, and that's what I feel.
No doubt. Hey, well, you can go next. I know you were out last week, so take it away.
All right, one thing that I find really bizarre right off the bat is that the fact that, my man Roy Jones is still in there and he's going to be facing Kimbo Slice. Oh, my goodness. This is, I mean, it's, Roy Jones is one of my favorite boxers of all time, but I got to admit, I can't even watch his fights anymore with this type of madness going on. So it's just interesting to see, how this will be deemed, Kimbo Slice, regardless of his, he had definitely that internet success, but, when he crossed over to the real thing, definitely had some trouble there. And, it's just going to be another, crossover fight or, just a travesty for what it is. And I missed out last week, so, I got to explain a little bit of my beef briefly. I was pretty, disappointed before even the marijuana thing came out with, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Just in his performance, man, I thought that he was really going to bring it against Martinez, and I got to give it to Martinez. His movement in the ring was just incredible. I didn't think that he would be able to do that for 12 rounds at 37 years old. So he was definitely impressive. So I spoke with Jay when the fight followed, and he's like, man, what did you think about the fight? And I was like, it was whatever. He's like, what about that 12th round? And that 12th round was definitely memorable. However, for me, as I was telling Jay, one good round, I'll say one great round doesn't wrap it up as in terms of a great fight. I didn't really see the competition there, the anticipation that I was waiting for, man. And I was almost to the point of snoozing at certain times because I just was like, what is Chavez Jr. doing, man? This is a huge fight for him, and it seems like he just didn't get excited into that 12th round. And the commentators, they beat me to it with the comparing it to Mildred Taylor. I thought that he might be able to pull it off in the very last seconds, but Martinez wanted it too bad, and despite his injured knee, he jumped up to win the fight. That's my beef.
No doubt. And I'll go last, and I think again I got to talk about the UFC. It made its return on pay-per-view, and Dana White always has his press conference afterwards, and I was really surprised at what he had to say about the viewerships on Fox. The attention of the press conference went to that Toronto reporter just talking about how the UFC is not a juggernaut. I think it's spelled juggernaut, jugger and then hashtag not. Just saying that the UFC is not as big as they think they are. And Dana White in the press conference trying to kind of use his promotioner speak to kind of spin it where he said the writer didn't know what he was talking about, and how he had a lot of just misinformation in his article. And I was really surprised to kind of hear that because usually Dana White's pretty honest about his promotion. But lately, I've just noticed he's been spinning a lot of just obvious facts. I mean, there's no doubt the last two UFC on Fox cards have done terrible in the ratings. It's a fact. It's not my opinion. It's just on the record that those ratings did poorly for whatever reason, whether it's the fights or it was going up against the Olympics. They did terrible. So I think, the UFC needs to take a look at their strategy on how they're promoting these Fox cards because, this next Fox card that's going on in December has a title fight, has Shogun on it, has BJ Penn on it. a lot of great fights on there, but there's no promotion. No one's going to watch. And, we're going to hear the excuses again of why the show did not do well. So I just think I'm getting kind of concerned with Dana White because I'm just hearing things I've never really heard from him before. He's just kind of, really trying to spin a lot of negative stuff into somehow a positive, which is just confusing me a lot. So hopefully, I don't know, this inner ear disease is kind of messing with Dana's mind. I don't know what's going on, but hopefully he straightens that out in the future. So, guys, let's talk about Holly Holm's latest fight. It's coming up in December. I want to get your guys' thoughts on the Cecilia Brækhus fight against Anne-Sophie Matisse and how this relates to Holly Holm. Jorge, you said that this fight is the second best fight you can make in women's boxing. So, how does Holly Holm figure into this mix? I mean, I remember we had this kind of discussion, a couple of months back. You stays in Albuquerque, she's not going to get the main fights elsewhere. So, how does Holly Holm figure into this mix? And could she be forgotten if she stays in Albuquerque exclusively?
I think she'll always be at the top tier. She'll be one of the. As of right now, I've actually moved Cecilia Brækhus ahead of her in the pound for pound rankings. And that's, I'm going out on a limb there. I'll probably have a lot of people here in Albuquerque upset with me. But when it comes to the performance Cecilia Brækhus put against Anne-Sophie Matisse, someone who Holly purposely boxed and would actually clinch, she fought an excellent technical fight when she fought Anne-Sophie Matisse the second time after, of course, being brutally knocked out in the first fight, as we all know. Brækhus showed heart and courage in her fight, though. She outboxed and outpowered Anne-Sophie Matisse, who has one of the highest knockout ratios of all time. Brækhus even staggered Anne-Sophie Matisse twice, something that Holly Holm actually wasn't able to do at all, and which is surprising because out of her 21 wins, Brækhus only has 5 knockouts. And for you to knock out someone as strong as Anne-Sophie Matisse or put her, on her back heels, it's very impressive. But when it comes to Holly Holm, I don't think Cecilia Brækhus and her people will travel outside of Europe for a fight. I mean, they're doing well there. They have 3 of the 4 championship belts in that weight class. So I don't feel that they need Holly Holm to proclaim themselves as the best pound for pound. She can continue dominating there in Europe. But if they actually want to do something for women's boxing, these 2 women have to meet somewhere. Whether they meet in the middle, meet in New York, wherever you want to meet, and on someone's undercard, or pay Brækhus enough to come to Albuquerque. It'll be an incredible contest just by seeing the women have similar styles and they're just as slick as one another, and it'll be a fight I'd love to see. I mean, when it comes to those 2 best women in the world as of right now, it would be them 2. Right now, Boxing Rec actually has Holly Holm ranked slightly higher than Brækhus, and I guess it's because of the competition. Holm has faced some decent amount of fighters over the past couple of years, but they have to do it for the sport. This is when it comes to of course it's not on the scale of a Pacquiao, a Mayweather, but they're talented enough, and I think they owe it to the history of women's boxing to fight one another somewhere.
You think it'd top the ratings when Layla Ali first versed Joe Frazier's daughter? Remember that one? Remember how they got hyped?
Yeah, I do remember that. If they promote it the right way, I definitely think so, because both women are extremely talented at what they do. They're the 2 best boxers, and they're both, they're pretty good looking. So when it comes to that, you play it right, you go by skill, and then you go based off of looks. If they promote it, I think they'll definitely be able to do something. But the way Fresquez has been running, Holly, he's reluctant to actually place any of her fights, live on pay-per-view. It's been a while since we've actually seen that. I believe the last time was when she fought Mary Jo Sanders like 2.5 years ago that there was actually on pay-per-view, but that is something that's definitely got to change, and I'm interested to see how many fights Holly Holm has contracted at the casino she's at now, and then definitely, I'd love to see something like that. I mean, what the hell, if Austin Trout wins, maybe he had against Cotto, spring of next year, he does a little pickup fight here in Albuquerque, throw him and Holly Holm on a card. I think at least 10,000.
Yeah.
You think that real quick, Jorge, with Austin Trout with his fight with Cotto, does he need to win against Cotto to get some love from Mexico?
I think so, but little by little, we're seeing that love. People are realizing that he's going to fight someone as big of a name as Miguel Cotto, and people are starting to show the love little by little. But I think he needs it to be recognized as a top athlete in this state, because right now he's not getting the love for whatever reasons it may be. Personally, as I mentioned before, majority of it, I think, is because of where he's based out of, but I think a lot of it has to do with race also.
So I want to get back kind of to the Holly Holm fight, and I want you guys' opinion on this. With Showtime and HBO, we're coming to our tipping point in Holly Holm's career as to, we're running out of opponents for her to fight here. I mean, we're going to rematches, and with Brookus out there, I believe she's undefeated. Is that correct?
That is right. She's 21-0.
She's 21-0. She's exciting. She has all this, characteristics you want in an opponent to bring in new viewers. What's it going to take for HBO and Showtime to get back into the women's fighting game? Will they be able to do a one-off like this? Would they be interested in that? Or do they want, the winner of this to possibly push as a star on their network? Because we've seen Ronda Rousey, even though with Strikeforce, they have a limited women's division that they've created, they're still pushing Ronda Rousey on every promotional outlet possible. So do you see, Showtime boxing and HBO boxing taking that same approach, possibly with Brookus or Holly Holm or another women's fighter that we're not even talking about?
If it happens on any of the networks, it'll be Strikeforce, I think. One, because Strikeforce has reached out to Holly Holm's camp before to actually fight on its card as an MMA fighter.
Showtime or Strikeforce?
Excuse me, Showtime has.
Showtime, okay.
Showtime has actually reached out to her to try to, put her on one of the cards. And obviously because of the relationship they have, it'll probably be on a Strikeforce card. And a lot of people think that, Holly Holm might be able to perform well. I mean, she's been kickboxing ever since she was 14 years old. She's 2-0 with 2 knockouts as a mixed martial artist and has fought some okay names. I mean, not world-renowned names in women's MMA, but I think if they ultimately want to make the transition and have her move to MMA, and who knows, we might see a Ronda Rousey Holly Holm fight in 2-3 years from now, if Holly Holm ever does decide to transition to MMA fully. So it makes the most logical sense for them to take a Holly Holm versus Brookus fight and show it on their network, just to try to build up Holm if they're serious about bringing her on as a mixed martial artist, I think.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Before we talk about UFC 152, Will, you brought up Austin Trout and Miguel Cotto, and you said, Jorge, that Austin Trout had a little bit of a height advantage. Do you know if it's going to translate to reach by any chance?
I definitely, I would think so. I'm not exactly sure what the reach is between both guys, but the way Austin fights, I mean, he fights kind of angular. So, and then Cotto, of course, is up in your face, kind of Joe Frazier style, Mike Tyson style, I guess you can say. But I definitely think you'll see that advantage.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how they're gonna, what their fight plan is gonna be against Austin Trout. Again, as we mentioned before in the past, Austin Trout, he's really got to utilize his youth. Cotto's definitely battle tested, but he has a lot of, I think, battle scars. I wonder the excitement for Cotto on this fight. We've been seeing a lot of respect, but I wonder as the fight draws closer, will Cotto become more passionate in terms of just solidifying his legacy a little bit more. But Austin Trout, he's definitely got to step it up. And based on the on the photograph that I saw, he probably most likely does have the reach advantage. And in Cotto's last fight against Mayweather, again, he did very well against the best technical boxer out there. So Austin Trout, he's gonna have to definitely use that reach advantage, but he's gonna have to be willing to slug it out in there. And I think some of the advantage that he's gonna have is definitely youth. But this is going to be a great opportunity for Trout to show his heart and what he's capable of doing in that ring.
Here's the reach. 67 inches for Cotto, 72 for Austin Trout.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he definitely got to pump that jab.
Yeah, no doubt. let's get to UFC 152, and a man with a huge reach, 84.5 inches, John Jones, gets a victory over Vitor Belfort. I want to ask you guys, we know in jiu-jitsu, anybody can get caught at any time, right? Anybody can tap. There's no honor in that. I mean, there's honor in tapping. I mean, there's no shame in, getting caught in any kind of submission. So with Vitor having the armbar as tight as he did, is John Jones, does his status kind of decrease because of that? Or do you think since he dominated Vitor for the majority of the fight, it kind of doesn't matter? It just shows how tough John Jones is.
I think it shows how tough he actually is for both men to say that they actually hurt his arm, about to pop. It was just amazing, and it just shows you the courage that this guy actually has despite all the hate. I think this is actually the last thing the haters of John Jones wanted to see: him face adversity, get tested waters, and him come out with flying colors, man. This is the last thing the haters wanted to see.
Agreed. Yeah, my brother, he hates John Jones, and it's personal because, he beat up his favorite fighter, Rampage Jackson, but, he doesn't like his image outside of the cage. So when Vitor had the armbar, he was flipping out, and he thought he had it, but once John Jones got out, he's very disappointed. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
What did you think about the Rashad Evans coaching in Vitor's corner? You think that was, obviously he didn't win, but what did you think about that, Jay?
That was real interesting because Vitor Belfort has joined Rashad Evans' camp, the Black Zillions in Boca Raton, Florida. So that's why Rashad Evans was in his corner. It's interesting. Rashad Evans is kind of floating out there. Some people we can kind of justify. It's weird. They're talking about Stephan Bonner hyping him up, and now the story is Stephan Bonner did so well against John Jones. Well, I remember John Jones destroying him. So I'm sure we'll hear the same thing with Rashad Evans. As time passes, we'll hear about how Rashad Evans did so well against John Jones. When you actually see the fight, John Jones dominated him. So I think time kind of, makes you look better in a way because the fight's kind of out of sight, out of mind. So with Rashad Evans is a decent draw for the UFC. So I can see him being in the title mix with a couple of wins anytime. So it wouldn't surprise me if he gets a title shot before John Jones goes to heavyweight. That's for sure.
Were there any exciting moments in that fight for you aside from the arm bars? A guy like me, I like to see some more stand up, and that was definitely missing. Did you anticipate that there was going to be more of an exchange with stand up?
I didn't anticipate the strategy of Vitor pulling guard. Now I know John Jones said that Vitor pulled guard in Pride Fighting Championships, but the strategy really didn't make any sense. He was getting elbowed to death when he landed on the ground. So, I didn't really understand the strategy there. I thought Vitor was going to clinch. John Jones was getting awfully close to him, and John Jones was cutting off the cage. So it wasn't like Jones was trying to be elusive at all. I just didn't get why Vitor just at least did not try to use his heavy hands more to possibly get, the knockout on John. The other thing is, of course, is the controversial leg kicks that John Jones uses. To me, I don't really like those kicks, to be quite honest, but they're legal by the rules, so it's not John's fault. If it's legal, then you can use it. So I think that's a athletic commission question that you're going to have to, ask New Jersey, talk to Nevada about. What do you guys think about those leg kicks? Do you have a problem with those leg kicks to the top of the leg at all, or do you not care at all?
Well, it just depends on, I guess there's got to be some sort of good interpretation of what is something that's acceptable and what's not, because, there's a lot of hardcore MMA fans that hate that just because of the danger it actually poses to the leg and to the knees. I don't know. How did you feel about that, Jay?
Well, I was thinking hypocritical for those same fans. Those same fans want knees to the head and soccer kicks. So, what's what's okay and what's not okay? Where do we draw the line here? So I don't know. Those kicks kind of make me nervous a little bit. We haven't seen anybody get seriously hurt. Anderson Silva was the first fighter I can really think of to use him on a regular basis, and John Jones picked up the technique. So I think no one's really gotten seriously hurt. So I don't really see the reason for banning them, but it's not my cup of tea. I'm just being honest when I'm watching a fight. So I want to ask you guys too about, I don't know if you caught the interview. Joe Rogan sat down with John Jones during the prelims. What did you guys think of that? To me, it kind of came out of left field. I had no idea they were doing a one-on-one interview. They talked about the DWI. What do you guys think of that?
You know what? I really didn't catch that one. I caught that part of the DWI, and it just turned me off. To be honest, I actually didn't even bother watching it. It was, I mean, get over it. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
It's something that we all know. We all know that he feels bad for it. But why continue bringing off the bad? They try to build up this, I guess, his image to where you're either going to love him or hate him, and continuing to bring this up it's kind of turning me off, and that's why I didn't even bother watching the interview after I heard that.
Did they say anything about his beard?
I think somebody said that it kind of looked trimmed up once he got in the octagon. So you're right. His mustache was going nuts leading up to the fight. I don't know what was going on, but luckily he kind of trimmed it up.
Yeah, like Kimbo on there, man.
How do you guys feel about that? The facial hair. I mean, I don't know. In boxing, I don't know if it makes that big of a difference, but in MMA, when you're consistently rubbing up on somebody, it's got to be irritating as hell.
A little bit, just like the hair with Clay Guida. I mean, it's an inconvenience. I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's not like you're fighting the Predator in there and his tentacle hanging out. I mean, it's a human being. If the dude has hair, I don't know. Like, he kind of have to deal with it. So, I just think I do agree with you, Jorge, on the interview, man. It was bizarre, and especially, I think I'm suspicious that it was Fox that came up with the idea, not UFC, because we all know about the UFC and avoiding controversy. If they see anything controversial, they'll totally gloss over it and totally avoid it. So I think this had to be a Fox call, in my opinion. I'd be shocked if this was a UFC plan. I would like to know that, because if that was the UFC's idea, I'm very confused. So I want to talk about the flyweight fight too. This fight was crazy on Twitter. For one, it was crazy because of the scoring. I saw a lot of scores for Benavidez. I saw a lot of scores for Johnson. And two, I saw a lot of people saying this is an awesome fight of technical skill. And I saw a lot of people, being put to sleep and bored. So what were your guys' thoughts on the fight?
I thought it was extremely technical. I enjoyed the fight just because of how technical it was. And to see guys that are that fast to be technical, it's just very rare to see two individuals that are that talented and that quick actually apply their skills with beauty. I could see how some people think it's boring. I mean, I'm a big technical boxing fan, and a lot of people hate that. They rather see people bang. But when it comes to the scoring, people said you said it was all over on Twitter. I actually wasn't tweeting or following Twitter that evening, but I had the fight 3-2 for Mighty Mouse, despite the fact that, good old Benavidez went to high school here in our neck of the woods.
He did.
It was very difficult for me to see that just because I was pulling for him, but I actually had the fight 3-2. I could have even seen it 4-1, to be honest. I don't think he did it. 4-1. Yeah, he wasn't as busy as I would have liked him to be, and obviously as the judges would have been. When I heard split decision, it surprised me. I knew it was going to go toward Mighty Mouse's favor, but I was interested in seeing what that judge had it for Benavidez, and they had it 3-2, which I couldn't really complain about. They gave it to the right guy, I thought. Mm-hmm. And you saw it at the end of the fight in the post-fight conference. Benavidez's face was just beat up, man, and Mighty Mouse was just clean.
I agree. He looked confused, Benavidez, towards like the end of during round 5. I mean, Demetrius Johnson is just. I mean, you call him Mighty Mouse for a reason. He was just all over the octagon, totally confused Benavidez. I get why people saw the fight boring. I mean, it wasn't my cup of tea, if I'm being totally honest. I wasn't bored. At the same time, I just would have liked to see a little bit more risk-taking. I mean, I kind of on the side of Will on this, taking risk to finish the fight instead of just, landing punches and getting out of there.
Your guy went.
Except for Benavidez, who saw an opportunity and almost got the submission.
Oh, that's right.
There wasn't really too much chances taken, so I was disappointed in that. I didn't think it was boring by any means. And really, I think the boos were kind of overrated. I think there were some fans booing, and Joe Rogan was going nuts, and Dana White was going off at the press conference. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, that was a Vegas crowd. They'd been booing and chanting, all these, expletives and throwing stuff in the octagon. So, I mean, there were some fans that booed in Toronto. While I was watching on TV, it didn't come across to me like the arena was totally angry about what they were seeing. So I think people are kind of overreacting. I think another reason why this fight didn't get the respect is that these guys are kind of new to your mainstream UFC audience. There's no connection with these guys. I mean, there's no bad blood. They're understated. I mean,
They're actually pretty nice guys, both.
they're
of them.
nice. Yeah,
Very-
and so there's no. I mean, one of them's not the war hero like Brian Stan, and one of them's not the bad guy like Michael Bisping. So you're not emotionally invested in what's going on. And, your basic UFC fan, what are these two little guys doing in the octagon? Who are these dudes? Why is this fight happening? You're going to get that for your drunken fan who just wants to see somebody's head roll in there, So I think it's going to take time for this flyweight division to improve. I mean, I just saw a video talking about Frankie Edgar, and you still see comments about, Frankie Edgar being too little to be in the UFC. It's insane. We still get that in 2012, but we do. So I just think it's going to take time for, your UFC audience to get accustomed to seeing flyweight fights. I want to also talk about Cub Swanson. We were kind of joking about it earlier, but Cub Swanson with the huge knockout over Charles Oliveira. Swanson has been on fire. It's his 3 wins in a row. He lost to Jose Aldo in the infamous flying double knee in the WEC, but he's on a win streak. Could you see Cub Swanson possibly getting a title shot? There's kind of slim pickings in that featherweight division. Could Cub Swanson possibly be in line to fight Jose Aldo?
I think so. He wants that rematch pretty bad, and if he keeps winning fights in this type of manner and style, he's going to quickly run up the ranks. And when it comes to the UFC in that weight class, however, I don't see him reaching it in another 2 fights. I think it's 2 fights, and maybe that 3rd fight he'll get that title shot. But it's going to be very difficult, I think, for Cub Swanson to get a title shot within the next year, I think. And Will, I think if you've never seen Cub Swanson fight before, you would love him, I think.
And why is that, Jorge?
Just his stand-up style, and he goes to bang, man. It's just he'll drop these guys with a body shot like punches, and it's because of the fact he trains out in Palm Springs with Timothy Bradley's trainer, Joel Diaz. He was up there. Surprised me. He was up in the cage with him, and and the Jacksons camp celebrating after his victory. So you'll like that boxing style he brings into the octagon.
You think with all the fighters, well, not all the fighters, I'm exaggerating, but with a few fighters talking about leaving Freddie Roach, you think that that's seeking from UFC fans trying to get him to help them with their hands? You think those days are over, or you think they're gonna still keep Roach around?
I think they'll still keep Roach around, man. He's a lot of these guys he hasn't brought up from the beginning, but I mean, he's got young guys like Jose Benavidez Jr., who's only 19 and supposed to be the next John Elway of boxing. So, as long as these young guys keep going for him for the name he's already built for himself, we'll see people keep going back to him.
No doubt. I want to shift, and I know we talked about this over and over and over again, but this is just in the news again with Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather. We were talking off air, me and Will were, about Manny Pacquiao drawing a defamation lawsuit to Floyd Mayweather after Mayweather accused Pacquiao of using performance-enhancing drugs. Looks like Manny Pacquiao's dropped that lawsuit. But I want to ask you guys about a lot of attention lately has been drawn towards this Pacquiao-Mayweather fight. And I thought for sure since Bradley got the controversial victory over Pacquiao that this fight was basically dead in the water in terms of getting that record pay-per-view audience. But I'm watching First Take today, and you see Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless. To me, they're pretty mediocre. I mean, they know kind of a little bit about boxing. I mean, they claim to follow the sport and all this, but they're not hardcore boxing fans. Stephen A. claims to be. He's not. Let's just keep it real. But anyway, they're talking about this fight happening, and really not even acknowledging that Timothy Bradley even won the fight against Manny Pacquiao. So I ask you guys, this fight, is it relevant? I mean, does Bradley not even matter anymore? I mean, was it so much a controversial decision that this fight could still happen? Because I remember when Bradley won, people said, yeah, Pacquiao got robbed. But at the same time, a lot of people were saying that Pacquiao looked slow. He didn't take advantage of a lot of opportunities, and he kind of deserved to lose. So what is it? It's almost 3-4 months later, and that fight doesn't even exist. What do you guys think?
And I'm sorry, Jay, just to clarify, which fight are you talking about? Is this in the Bradley versus Mayweather or Mayweather versus Pacquiao?
It was Bradley versus Pacquiao this summer.
Oh, I mean, in terms of where that puts Bradley, or
Yeah, well, I want to. We're both. I mean, people are talking. That fight never even happened. Like Pacquiao won, and that Pacquiao, people want to see Pacquiao versus Mayweather, and Timothy Bradley. You know, where does he go from here? And also, is your desire to see this Mayweather Pacquiao circus come to an end in terms of a fight? Are you still interested?
Oh, okay. So I mean, yeah, it is kind of odd how Timothy Bradley has just went away. I mean, yeah, you have to actually remind people that he actually beat Manny Pacquiao. For some reason, it's just dissipated from people's mind. I mean, let's just face it. It wasn't that great of a fight. You know, the controversy, you know, it toppled his performance. I mean, yeah, definitely Timothy Bradley, he came to fight. He was in good shape. But he didn't do anything spectacular. And then for the simple fact that, you know, it was kind of like, you know, when Manny Pacquiao, you know, of course they had trouble reaching negotiations with the rematch. And it didn't even seem like Timothy Bradley, you know, wanted that rematch that badly. I mean, you know, he complained a little bit, but, you know, with he failed to capitalize on really further destructing Manny Pacquiao's star power, and it has started to, it's not as glistening like it used to be. So that's really unfortunate in the sense of this Mayweather Pacquiao fight. Like I said before, I can't front. If it happened, yes, I would be glad. But I mean, at this point, it's really past the hype in terms of where these guys really were in their careers and the opportunity they had to face each other like 2 years ago. You know, when they were at the top of their games and nobody was even starting to slow down. Now they're starting to slow down. I think people still want to see the fight, but you know, this is just crazy. I mean, when I think back in terms of boxing history, some of the fights that didn't happen, this is in comparison kind of like to Aaron Pryor and Sugar Ray Leonard. There's no reason why Sugar Ray Leonard shouldn't have fought Aaron Pryor. He was a great fighter, of course, legendary fighter. However, people wanted to see that fight and they couldn't understand it. Pacquiao here today is saying that, you know what, Mayweather, whatever you want, let's go ahead and do this. But again, these guys, I can't understand when these guys decide to speak up. Now Pacquiao's getting super brave after he already has made this fight, this fourth fight with Marquez. Now he wants to say, I want to agree to these terms. So we're not even, you know, we thought that maybe Manny Pacquiao could. So that's what it's become in waiting for this fight. As each fight that these guys take and not facing each other, it becomes just heartbreaking for hardcore boxing fans because we're praying, we're like, oh, I hope he gets through this guy so it doesn't diminish, you know, the possibility and the hype of the fight. And that's what we're seeing that's happening. I mean, seriously, we're seeing Marquez and Pacquiao for a fourth time. Nobody really wants to see this fight. We know that Manny Pacquiao definitely has trouble with Marquez, and I really don't see the fight being any different. Do I hope that it is? Absolutely. I would love to see a slugfest like we got. You know, probably like the first one is my favorite, but you know, it's more of a risk to Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather. He hasn't even mentioned a possible opponent aside from Mayweather. So yeah, as they mentioned earlier, it takes two guys to make this fight, but I'm just really sick of it, and it's just really shameful. I almost seem to the point where it's just, you know, these type of matchups, they have to be mandatory. But of course we can't force them to fight each other. But the real excitement and the opportunity for these guys to fight each other at the top of their game, I feel is past.
It has already passed. But what's crazy is that if they ever do decide to get in the ring, each one of them is going to get $60 million, and you know, and that's what's crazy about it. If they would have fought, you know, 3 years ago when everyone thought, yeah, it would be one hell of a fight, they would have probably gotten a little less. So as time goes on, the more money these guys are going to want, and the likelihood that they're still going to get it, which is insane. I don't know if a Pacquiao loss might actually hurt him. But as far as Timothy Bradley, he has become irrelevant, and there's no one else that he can fight that's going to help him gain a bigger name than you know, if he would have fought Pacquiao and beat him legitimately. There are rumors right now that Timothy Bradley might fight Robert Guerrero in December. That'd be a pretty interesting fight to actually see. And
Or the
see,
rematch for Peterson, which would be
or
pretty boring.
yeah, which would be very boring. I mean, either way, it's like
He should have took it. What do you think, Jorge? Don't you think at this point the logical decision is to take on Amir Khan? I mean, the first time that he didn't take the negotiations, he didn't take that fight. Everybody was like, "What are you doing?" You know, Amir Khan, he switched up trainers. Would you be happy to see that fight between Bradley and Amir Khan?
I don't. Based off of what happened again in the Danny Garcia fight with Amir Khan, I don't know, man. And who knows what Amir Khan's actually going to do when it comes to his trainer? I mean, I think he's just at a stage where he's lost in his career right now. So when it comes to Khan, who knows if he'll finally move up to welterweight to actually fight Timothy Bradley? He'll be a lot slower and have less power up in that weight class. So I don't think Amir Khan will go up there. I tell you what, maybe if, I don't know, I have no idea who you could fight next, honestly, man. It's not going to make a difference. Timothy Bradley will be irrelevant. His fighting style will not make him a superstar. He's a star, but he'll never become a superstar based off of what happened against Pacquiao, where Pacquiao was clearly robbed, and based off of the other possible guys that I could actually fight him. Talk about guys like maybe a rematch against Alexander. I mean, there's no one really in that weight class that's going to turn him into a superstar.
Yeah, put him against Ricky Hatton in college.
Hey, what the hell?
I would watch that. But I want to ask you about, before we move on to the UFC on field preview, which is the bigger robbery, the Monday Night Football game with Green Bay and the Seahawks, or the Pacquiao Bradley fight earlier this summer?
Oh my God.
Man.
Well, you know what? When it comes to the NFL, that came down to one play. If you think about each round as one play, then, Manny Pacquiao actually got pretty hosed. But it was karma that came to bite Manny Pacquiao in the butt, I think.
True.
So I'll go with the Green Bay one.
Yeah, me too. I gotta agree.
I
want to shift our attention real quick while we have a couple more minutes to the UFC on field this weekend. We did have a triple header of minor MMA cards on the national scene, but now this is down to Bellator, which begins its last season on MTV2 this Friday, and also on Epix, and on Spike.com. So if you don't have MTV2, not a big deal. You can watch it on Spike.com or watch on the Epix, that's EPIXHD.com also, so check that out. But with UFC on field, unfortunately, you have to have field TV to watch it, and again, we're stuck with another field card that comes on 2 o'clock Mountain Time, our neck of the woods, in Nottingham, England, with the main event being Stefan Struve and Stipe Miocic. Now, very exciting styles. It's pretty crazy now in 2012 that the UFC has 2 straight cards that have heavyweights being the main event. So are you excited about the UFC heavyweight division? Next week we have Travis Brown against Antonio Bigfoot Silva. You guys interested in these fights? Are you seeing a possible number 1 contender fight Dos Santos for the title in the next calendar year? What are you guys seeing as fight cards so far?
I definitely. When it comes to, this fight card, it's what I like about this fight card is that the matchmaking in this was unreal, Jay. I don't think one single guy is more than a 2.5 to 1 underdog, or favorite, I should say. So it's a very competitive card altogether. But when you mention the heavyweight scene as to who should deserve that next, title shot, it's like I'm a big fan of Travis Brown, man. This guy is humongous and he's exciting. He knocks people out. Out of his 13 wins, he has 9 knockouts, and he also has a couple of submissions. So this guy is dangerous either way. And I think just based off of his size and how tall he is, he poses a threat to Dos Santos and that crown, I think.
No doubt. So what about these guys on this card this weekend? Because Miocic has, a couple of big victories in the UFC. He has the KO of Phil DeBreeze, and he TKO Shane Del Rosario with a TKO. I guess he's not lighting your world on fire at all, huh?
No, not really. I like the guy. I have nothing against it. I just think, can he beat any of the top 3 guys? I don't think so. I think the only guy that would be able to is Travis Brown, I think. But should be very entertaining to see how he goes. Steve is actually a 2-1 favorite here in this fight. So
Yeah, he's won 3 fights in a row.
Yeah, and I think he's gonna win by knockout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting. I don't know if I want to throw a prediction. I think I like Miocic in this fight just because Stru's susceptible of being knocked out. I mean, it's kind of like that big redwood in the forest. I mean, you think it can't be toppled, but once it goes down, it's just like it's spectacular sight. So, I'll go for the underdog. I think you're right about the matchmaking, Jorge. I like the Dan Hardy Amir Sadala matchup. I like Brad Pickett. I was a big fan of his ever since the Bodog fight days. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it's kind of like Dead or Alive, the video game. They had kind of the big billionaire that would send all these fighters to an island, and they do his MMA tournament. So that's where I first saw Brad Pickett, and he was pretty awesome there. That was a long time ago, but that was when Bodog had Fedor's contract. It was a long time ago, but Pickett was very impressive there. We have John Hathaway on this card, Dwayne Ludwig, Paul Sass against Matt Wyman. So, I guess if you have Fuel, which I don't think Comcast doesn't even carry, I think you have to have DirecTV to get Fuel TV. You can check that out. I kind of want to ask you guys too, just about some kind of breaking news real quick. A couple of news subjects before we call it a day. One is Shane Carwin suffering a knee injury. He says he tweaked it, but he's going to be ready for his fight against Roy Nelson. And I guess I want to get your thoughts on this too, Will, on this the overall injury epidemic in MMA, because I had kind of a rant about this last week, and it seems like no one seems to care with media or the UFC. I mean, everybody's just saying, it's an MMA bug and it'll go away. And with this injury epidemic going on for the last, I would say, over a year, it's gotten pretty serious, and yet no one wants to claim any responsibility or do anything. Either of you guys, I think I posed this question to Jorge. I don't think we've seen this in boxing. If boxing had an epidemic, would the sport do something, or would they do the same thing as UFC and try to ignore the problem?
I mean, that's very interesting. I mean, you have to talk about the fights in the sense of, like, boxing. Are we talking about just fights that are going to be live, Friday night fights, or we're talking about pay-per-view?
Oh, main events.
Okay, yeah, like main events, like pay-per-view. I definitely see this as being problematic for boxing. But the essential difference, with mixed martial arts, you were mentioning like the kicks that John Jones is throwing, and they're legal, but yet they're really risky. And that's just something that the boxers don't really have to deal with. It's this guy throwing a overhand right too hard and things like that. So it almost come to the point where it's expected because of mixed martial arts, the many styles that these fighters are doing, the different muscles that they're exercising, and the different techniques. I mean, is it almost just somewhat acceptable because they're performing at such high levels with these various techniques that fans are willing to be empathetic when they have these injuries, regardless of the major letdowns of the events?
Well, I don't think they are empathetic. I think they're angry because their fights are getting canceled. I mean, you got people. A lot of times they buy non-refundable tickets to whatever city and they want to go. It's either main event, and then it gets canceled, and a new main event that gets put in place. They don't want to see that. And as well as you buying pay-per-views, you plan out in advance, and this pay-per-view gets changed, and you're bummed out to see that. I don't know. I think my opinion is kind of like with the NFL, the NBA, different college sports. There's training standards in place to make sure the athletes involved don't overtrain. And with MMA, you just don't see that. Is there anything else? Oh, go ahead, Jorge.
I was just going to say, is like Will said, it's just there's so many different manners in which a mixed martial artist can hurt themselves. I mean, just the lateral movement, any type of movement, whether it's sprawling or anything, it's incredible how a lot of these guys, I think, actually hold up. I'm thinking completely the opposite, is that a lot of these guys, either they go in injured or don't say anything. And it's really incredible to me that, I think we're at the pace, especially since all these medical plans and stuff were put into place over the past year and a half for these fighters. They're taking care of themselves and knowing the fact that, they have these, medical expenses, and they can afford to sit out an extra 3 months because of that. So it's just the mixed martial artist, just ability and athleticism just continues to mesmerize me, to be honest.
It does me, but the fans are losing because they don't see the fights they want to see. And the UFC are losing millions of dollars, and yet, especially with the UFC, they're losing their main events, and no one seems to give a damn at all. So I'm just wondering, when is the tipping point? I mean, we had already 2 events, I guess 3 if you count the event in Brazil, 3 events canceled by Zuffa, Strikeforce, or UFC. When is the line going to be drawn? So
yeah, and with the string of good luck, though, just like 4 or 5 months worth of no cancellations in the main events, the UFC is going to get on a little hot streak, and eventually maybe the injury bug might bite them again. But I don't think nearly as bad as it has this year, man. It's insane.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty horrible. I think that's going to wrap up our show, guys. Anything else you guys wanted to add before we call it a night?
No, sir.
Satisfied.
All right, cool. Well, again, you can get in touch with our show through Twitter, through @LowBlow. We have 300 followers now, so hopefully we keep going up. We've been bouncing between 299 and 300. I know that's scrub numbers, but 300, I'll take it. So please follow us on Twitter through @LowBlow. Also, you can also check our Facebook page through facebook.com/LowBlow Podcast. We're also on Podomatic through LowBlow. We're on iTunes, Stitcher. Just type in LowBlow Radio. We're on there. Also our email, lowblow505@gmail.com. And also get in touch with FightFans Radio through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Ustream. It's all one name, FightFans Radio. You'll find our content along with the rest of the FightFans Radio network family. Great shows on there. Ranges from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to just all kinds of different MMA opinions. So please check that out in your spare time. So for Jorge and Will, I'm Justin. Enjoy the fights this weekend, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
This has been a Low Blow on FightFans Radio, SouthwestFight.com, and USCombatSports.com. We'll see you next week. Have a good night.